And we're back at RSAC 2026. My name is Christophe, Bertrand, Principal Analyst at theCUBE Research, and we're going to be talking to two founders. Very pleased to have Gal Shafir and Nir Loya Dahan, both co-founders. Gal, you're the CEO, Nir, you're the CPO, so one of you is running the numbers, the other is actually building the product. And the company is called Fig, so I'd love to hear a little more about the company name and then a little bit about your background. So Gal, let's start with you. Why Fig?
Well, when we started ideating for the idea, the meeting name was so long with all the names of the founders, and we asked ChatGPT for giving us a one-syllable name of a fruit that we can start using, and it just caught, and we stayed with Fig.
So tell me a little bit about your background, and then Nir will go with you, but go ahead, Gal.
So before Fig, I've led the global security architect teams at Google Cloud Security, mostly focusing on Google SecOps, which was the largest business at the time. That came after the acquisition of Simplify, where I did similar roles for a few years from the very beginning until the Google acquisition.
Got it. So what about you, Nir?
Yeah, so before starting Fig, I was the VP of product for a company called Simulate, around adversarial attack simulation, so been there for 4 years. And before that I used to work with Gal back at Simplify before the acquisition in different product roles, had an amazing time there.
Right, sounds like the typical, we met somewhere, we had, had a set of great products, great experience, and decided to go solve a problem nobody else can solve, which is what I want to talk about. When you think about, security operations, clearly there's a lot going on, especially with AI. But one thing you've introduced, this idea of security operations resilience, which I really like. There are other vendors who talk about resilience operations and things like that. So I think that changes the game a little bit. And simply because you're dealing with a big problem, in my opinion, which is change. Change happens in IT infrastructure all the time, in security infrastructure. It's a constant. Yet it's a constant that is either managed, which is change that you plan to a large extent, and change that is not managed, and that's drift. So I'd like to double click on that. Maybe we'll start with you, Nir. What is your definition of essentially operational resilience, and why does it matter?
So one thing we've noticed over the years working in SOCs with security operations teams is that they kind of accepted that hard fact of life of we can't really trust our infrastructure. We're running all those amazing initiatives. Back then it was automation, then it was like expanding to other technologies. By the way, now it's AI. A lot of security teams want to implement AI in their process and everything. But every engineer asks themselves that question. It's like, do I even know if it's working? Do I even know if it's configured properly? If I'm going to do this change in my environment, is it going to break or not? And they kind of accepted it, leaving with workarounds they build on their own, having some kind of like services sometimes to look at specific issues, and not having trust in their reliability and resilience of their infrastructure, the way they spelled it out for us. We didn't invent the term resilience in the SOC. They told us. And this is kind of like how we've identified that this needs to be solved.
Right, so clearly this is a problem that you've identified talking to, I imagine, a large number of customers, end users, people doing this day in and day out, having to deal with a lot of attacks, a lot of problems because of change, whether they wanted the change or didn't want the change, clearly. So Gal, tell me a little bit more about the type of customers that you are going after, the type of customers you have, early adopters. What are you hearing? How are they actually using your solution? And I'm very curious about how they're resonating with resilience versus just management or operations, security operations management.
So the type of customers that we're after and obviously are now customers in production are customers who own their own SecOps infrastructure, and they have this function of SOC engineering and detection engineering that operate the infrastructure, or the MSSPs that operate those infrastructures for others. Either way, if you run a SOC, you're going to have this problem. And what we're seeing them and the way they use the product is, really the same way that any engineer in the organization that is running a complex and interdependent infrastructure has a tool to first of all understand what is going on, what's connected to what, how a change over here might break something over there, and are we really operational right now? They use this tool the same way any other engineering team, whether if it's network engineers or DevSecOps engineers or DevOps engineers would run their infrastructure from a single place with confidence.
So let's double click on that for a second. The biggest issue that I think you've brought up in your early days as an organization is the fact that there's drift happening that is not controlled. I mean, we can talk about plan change, that's going to be my next question. But let's start with drift. It surprises me always, oh well, we have this great infrastructure, we spend all of these millions of dollars building things, and we have great engineers, great people, and somehow something changes, and nobody really knows why, and why something changed. Now, I can see how it could happen in a highly hybrid environment, maybe some provider changes something, they don't let you know, okay, that could happen, but drift happens. So why does drift happen in the first place? Let's talk about that. And once we understand that, what do you do with your solution, with the FIG platform, to actually alert and fix?
Yeah, so drift happens because of various different reasons, but the thing is that the business changes. The environment changes, data changes, that's the nature of data. It constantly evolves to the needs of the organization. The same goes for security data, whether it's IT, whether it's internal tools and logging, whether it's third-party vendors. Data is changing, data is growing, and detection needs to adapt in a way. And this is exactly what we're looking at. What we are doing is we abstract the client's security infrastructure into what we call security data lineage. Basically meaning we can, and you can basically identify the entire data flow from the data source all the way to the detection itself and everything that it goes in between to identify whether the configuration that the data is going to go through, whether the change that the data is going to go through, and what are the different structures of the data, to the point of what is the exact pattern of the exact value within the exact field to that point, because sometimes, and most times, the silent failures happen at this very, very specific point. And this is how we're able to constantly make our clients constantly sync with business change that happens around them.
Gal, I'd like to double click on silent failures. Actually, that's a great term because it really it says it all without saying anything. And I like this idea of lineage. I think it's essentially what you're doing is trying to really identify everything, understand everything, document everything, so should something come up, you can go figure it out quickly, automatically, ideally, and then fix it. So tell me about silent failures and what are the typical silent failures that your customers have identified, and why should they care about them? What is the domino effect that it creates?
So the fact of life, which we've learned through our Google SecOps days and Simplify days and Simulate days, is that no engineer or no CISO knows if a detection rule hasn't triggered in 3 months because they were secure or because something got broken in the plumbing a couple of months ago. And that's really the silent failures, which means that when the rule and the logic is looking for something that doesn't exist in the data anymore because of an upstream drift or an initiated change, there's no alert on it. Nobody knows that that's the case. And that really gets down to the level of, maybe my rule is looking for an email address in the data, but right now because of an upstream change from my identity team, my identity logs are coming in with the domain/username. The data still flows in. It's not that it's not flowing, but the alert will never trigger, or even worse, partially trigger.
Oh, that makes perfect sense. And yeah, I can imagine that's absolutely impossible to catch unless you're really looking for those changes. So let me ask you about this event, and I'd love your take on AI, because obviously this is a cybersecurity event, it has been for many years, yet this year, for sure, it looks like we're in another AI event. Nir, let's talk about that. What's your take on what's going on with cybersecurity and AI tools? Are we making things better or worse?
So I'll split my answer into two. So first of all, how do you secure AI in the organization? I think this is bigger than the internet. Let's be honest. It completely changes everything and every method of work we know, and introduces a tremendous challenge for security leaders these days. What's going to be the right approach to secure AI? Is it like a user? Is it not like a user? And I'm excited to see so many interesting approaches to tackle this challenge. On the other end, there's using AI for security. And this is what we see a lot, where security organizations want to harness the AI power because the attacker is going to do the same thing.
Exactly.
And what we really see is that while organizations want to utilize and harness AI power, they need to do it on a reliable and working data infrastructure. Because if it's not, we had a saying back at Simplify, when you're automating on a broken process, you're only going to break things faster.
Right.
So this kind of like making sure the foundation works before putting AI on top of it is key for harnessing AI successfully.
Right, Gal, I know you have to run, you're a busy guy. What would be your closing thoughts, recommendations you would have for our viewers? What should they do next? What should they think about?
I think that if you really boil it down, at the end of the day, everybody talks about cyber resilience and everyone invests in attack resilience, but you can't really have cyber resilience if you don't have the operational resilience. And now more than ever, when change is rapidly changing even more because the organization is rapidly evolving even more, that breaks more things downstream, and when the SecOps infrastructure is becoming cheaper and better and faster and everybody understands that, it also becomes more fragmented and complex and distributed to engineer, with more people doing less analysis on alerts and doing more operational work on the actual foundation. And if you don't trust your foundation today, you'll have really hard time to embrace tomorrow and to go through this SOC modernization that you're hoping to go for.
Well, I think you said it all. You cannot build on a bad foundation, so I think that's definitely words of wisdom here. Well, I look forward to seeing how you guys do and maybe talk to you next year, and very curious to hear more about your customers and how the platform is doing moving forward. Nir and Gal, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us, Christophe.
Great to have you here today. And to our viewers, thank you very much. Stay tuned, we have a lot more coming up. RSAC 2026 in San Francisco.